And new tonight, it could now be months before Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan faces trial. Dugan is accused of helping an undocumented immigrant evade immigration officials.
Okay, at this point, everyone knows who Judge Hannah Dugan is. She's the judge that was arrested by the FBI for helping an illegal immigrant evade ICE. And the trial right now is at a standstill, whether or not to push forward and prosecute Judge Hannah Dugan for criminal actions. Well, another judge has chimed in.
Tonight, a federal magistrate recommends the obstruction case against Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan move forward.
And Judge Hannah Dugan's defense team is very upset. They already said they're going to appeal this decision, even though it's not the final decision. Now, before we start this video and dig into all of this new information, make sure to please like the video. It's the #1 way you guys are helping this channel, but it also helps others see the videos as well, and people need to see what's happening right now in this court case. It's a big one.
Dugan's legal team tried to get the case tossed, citing in part judicial immunity. Tonight, U.S. Magistrate Judge Nancy Joseph recommends the motion be denied. District Court Judge Lynn Edelman will make the final decision on whether the case against Dugan moves forward.
Okay, so here's where things get a little confusing. This is the man who's in charge of Judge Hannah Dugan's court case, Judge Edelman. However, this is Judge Joseph. She is a federal magistrate in the area, and she gave a recommendation overseeing what the arguments were from both sides. And according to her, Judge Hannah Dugan, who's arguing she's a judge and she shouldn't be criminally prosecuted, she's calling it ridiculous, and she wants the case to move forward.
Her thoughts on the magistrate judge's ruling?
Yes, she's disappointed as well, and she has faith that Judge Edelman will come to a different conclusion. She's been strong and tough and remains steadfast in her interest in really setting forth what the real facts are in this case.
So I hope you caught that. Judge Hannah Dugan is hoping that Judge Edelman will have a different conclusion. This is because it doesn't really matter what the magistrate says. That is not a binding decision. However, it's heavily influenceable. But ultimately speaking, this judge right here has the final say, but he's making sure to take his time on a decision.
Give a little hint at the defense, what your defense will be and what you will present that you haven't already in the documents.
Yeah, we can't share everything, of course, at this time, but the things that Judge Dugan did are not at all anything unusual. As we've seen on those videos that you already have, the defendant in this case went down the hall. It's actually 11 feet and I believe 8 inches outside of the main entrance to 2 federal agents who are watching and ready to arrest him.
So these are new statements from Judge Hannah Dugan's defense team. They're being very reserved, but they're giving us some insight. They're still holding to Judge Hannah Dugan should not be prosecuted. This case needs to end now. Everything we saw in that video, that is nothing new for a judge. She was just doing her job. This is completely normal.
Covers all of the acts that she took in the courtroom and in the courthouse hallway with that undocumented individual. She filed a motion to dismiss. There's an amicus brief, which means a brief from friends of the court, from dozens of retired judges in her support. And the government has responded to that. So Judge Edelman, the federal district court judge here in Milwaukee, is reading those papers, is at some point going to make a decision whether or not Hannah Dugan's acts were immune.
Now, before we continue, make sure to please subscribe to my channel. We've been covering the Judge Hannah Dugan case since day one, and I want to make sure you guys are well informed on this story, so please subscribe. So here's what's interesting. Judge Hannah Dugan's defense team is arguing all of the acts we saw from Judge Hannah Dugan in the hallway, those are completely normal and within the normative means of how a judge should operate in the hallway of a courthouse. However, the stakes are very high for the entire country of the United States right now. Basically, if this court case is dropped, that means any other judge in the United States can argue immunity for exactly what Judge Hannah Dugan did, which is why this judge who's in charge of the court case is really taking his time. Whatever he decides could literally change the course of American history and our legal system.
All of those things are things that judges do each and every day in every courthouse in every state in this country. What is unusual about this prosecution is the prosecution itself, that the government is interfering with the judiciary.
I will actually agree with the Judge Hannah Dugan defense team. It is quite unusual for any court case or prosecution against a standing judge who facilitated an illegal immigrant walking out the back door and evading ICE. And again, according to the Judge Hannah Dugan defense team, they are arguing everything that Judge Hannah Dugan did on that day is what judges do every single day. This is normal.
FBI agents arrested Judge Dugan in April, accusing her of helping an undocumented immigrant avoid immigration agents in the courthouse. Dugan's legal team tried to get the case tossed, citing in part judicial immunity. Tonight, U.S. Magistrate Judge Nancy Joseph recommends the motion be denied.
Now, the document given by the magistrate judge, you know, the one who recommended the court case continue and Judge Hannah Dugan should not be held immune, here's what she had to say, a very quick summary. It is well established and undisputed that judges have absolute immunity from civil lawsuits for monetary damages when engaging in judicial acts. The magistrate judge wrote in her decision, this, however, is not a civil case, and review of the case law does not show an extension of this established doctrine to the criminal context. Accordingly, I recommend that Dugan's motion to dismiss the indictment on judicial immunity grounds be denied.
And yes, it's not unusual to have a federal case essentially be taken off of the trial calendar while there are pretrial issues being taken care of.
So we are in that pre-trial issue stage. Basically, Judge Hannah Dugan's defense team is on the appeal train, and they have that right. They are going to appeal the magistrate's decision, even though it's not a binding decision. Judge Hannah Dugan's defense team knows this is highly influenceable, like we talked about before. Also, Judge Hannah Dugan's defense team already said, we will appeal the final decision, the actual binding the decision to move forward. So this is why the judge who's in charge of this whole case, he's taking his time. He's not rushing with anything, because no matter what he says, favorable for Judge Hannah Dugan or unfavorable, everyone's going to be appealing.
You know, these types of videotapes always make it more difficult for the defense. I spent much of my career as a criminal defense attorney, and that type of visual evidence makes it very difficult because there's no denying what occurred here. What the judge is trying to say is that she has immunity, that what she was doing as a judge. I find that pretty hard to understand. You know, if you are an NFL linebacker, you have a right to tackle people on the field. You don't have a right to go out in the parking lot and start tackling people. You had the same situation as a member of Congress. You had protections under speech and debate on what you said on the floor. But when you left the floor, you lost those special protections.
And again, I want to make it clear, the Judge Hannah Dugan defense team is not denying anything that happened in the hallway. They're simply saying, yeah, that's the job of a judge. We see it every day. This is what judges do. But the prosecution is saying, no, that is not what judges do. It's very interesting to see. We have a divide. Some people who have watched the footage are saying, I see nothing wrong. On the flip side, you have people saying, I see everything wrong. Make sure to leave your comments down below how you feel about this. In fact, there are protesters who are supporting Judge Hannah Dugan.
Hands off Dugan! Hands off Dugan!
A group of Milwaukee faith leaders gathering outside the federal courthouse in Milwaukee today
to demand that the charges against her be dropped.
As inside, federal prosecutors and attorneys from Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan met briefly with U.S. District Judge Lynn Edelman.
So here's where things also get interesting. This court case could also change all of the courtrooms in the United States as far as the jurisdiction of a courtroom versus a court hallway.
But before there can be a trial, her team wants the case dismissed, saying whatever happened in the courtroom falls under judicial immunity.
Based on the motion that we filed and all of the case law, that she is immune from this prosecution, that it shouldn't have even been brought in the first place. So obviously that does have to get resolved.
In documents, federal prosecutors push back, saying the motion is an unprecedented dismissal on grounds of judicial immunity, ignoring well-established law. They argue Dugan's desired ruling would, in essence, say that judges are above the law.
So the reason why this is a big deal is because we have the actual testimony from Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, where she clearly says, look, there was an active court case happening, and all of a sudden, the judge, Judge Hannah Dugan, left the court case, went into the hallway, and did her thing there. According to the DOJ, this is clear intent to try and facilitate, move the ICE agents out of the way, and then send the illegal immigrant out the back door through the hallway and evade ICE. And again, if Judge Hannah Dugan wins this case, that means judges now will have immunity and can do the exact same thing. They can stop everything that's happening in the courtroom, and it doesn't matter if the person is an illegal immigrant or a legal American citizen. It could happen to anyone, where the judge can just stop everything. Hold on, there's something going on in that hallway, and we can see some more facilitating or moving around in the public hallway because the jurisdiction changes. This means that a judge can now be in the hallway and be held immune. That is what's at stake here.
The case is being highly litigated. Shortly after she was indicted in federal court, Hannah Dugan's lawyers filed a motion to dismiss, basically saying, listen, she's being prosecuted for undertaking official acts that she was doing as a judge. She has the control of her courtroom. Judges have control of courthouses. Those are official acts that since 1607, the common law has decided that judicial acts are immune to prosecution. Of course, the government has a different view of this, saying that trying to conceal and obstruct the arrest of this undocumented person did not constitute an official act. It was outside of her duties as a judge.
Now, a lot of us seem to forget the reason why Judge Hannah Dugan decided to go out into the hallway, and then all of a sudden the illegal immigrant walks through the back door and out into the hallway is because Judge Hannah Dugan just ended the court case. And we have the testimony from Pam Bondi in which they are waving the red flag and saying, hold on, this is not proper court procedure. Because a lot of us are just focusing on the act of the illegal immigrant walking out the back door. But we have to remember what happened before that.
Rare for victims to want to cooperate. They wanted to cooperate. They were sitting in the courtroom with the state prosecutor. The judge learns that ICE was outside to get the guy because he had been deported in 2013, came back in our country, commits these crimes, charged with committing these crimes, victims in court. Judge finds out. She goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom, you're not going to believe this, takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave, while a state prosecutor and victims of domestic violence are sitting in the courtroom.
Wow.
You know, Madam Attorney General.
Now, just to give you some context, Pam Bondi seems to be way more animated than usual. Well, this is because at the time of that interview, nobody knew what was going on. Nobody had the public footage we see today of Judge Hannah Dugan in the hallway and doing everything we saw on the footage. So it looks like Pam Bondi was really trying to paint the picture. This is real. This actually happened. And now that we have the footage, the public perception, you can make your own decision how you feel about this. But at the time, Pam Bondi, again, was really trying to tell everybody, this is legitimately what happened, and I have seen the footage.
Because if you look at the end of that tape, what happens when he runs out of the building? He runs right in front of a car, and those agents that have to follow him in that traffic, what if the car had hit him? What if they hit an agent? That's what happens when you allow someone you facilitate their escape and move it into a public area. That's exactly what the agents wanted to avoid, because in a hallway in a courtroom, people are not armed. It's a closed space. You can prepare for it. Now, in terms of her punishment, quite frankly, I think this judge is hoping for jury nullification. I think she's hoping this is a very liberal district. She'll get a very favorable jury. She just got a remarkably favorable judge. She was assigned randomly a judge who was rebuked because he had written and said things publicly that were raw and political against Trump and against the conservatives on the Supreme Court.
Okay, if you are afraid of political theater, I will say this. As somebody who's covering this court case, I have no afraid of calling out either the prosecution or the defense team if this is political theater. But the judge who is overseeing this case, he is taking his time. And the reason why I think he's really taking his time is because all of this will change the course of American history. If he drops the case, like we said before, every judge can claim what Judge Hannah Dugan is claiming. Immunity and everything Judge Hannah Dugan did in the footage, that is within official acts of a federal judge. On the flip side, when he presses forward with the case, if any other judge does what Judge Hannah Dugan did, there will now be a cross-reference for judges to prosecute other judges if they are facilitating and getting in the way of ICE agents in a public hallway. Which is why I think we're not really seeing any political theater, because that judge will definitely get called out for it, and anybody else will if they're trying to influence either being a Republican or Democrat in this court case. Okay, so as I make this video, we are still waiting for another appeal against the magistrate. And again, we know it's confirmed that Judge Hannah Dugan's team will do that. They do have a certain amount of time to make sure everything is good to go. So make sure you please subscribe to my channel. Make sure to please like the video so I can give you guys more updates on this story. I still find it rather fascinating how much attention is not being given to this case. I'm sure when we actually get to the trial, more people will start to cover this, but I really appreciate all of you who were here from the very beginning, because we quite literally covered Judge Hannah Dugan hours after she was arrested. So I thank you guys for everything. Anyway, hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. God bless, and we'll see you all later.